we're being asked to graph the inequality and write it in interval notation. So first, graphing the inequality, and we have 5 problems here. You have to figure out where is your number that you're looking at, 0. Typically 0 is going to be in the middle, not always, but typically it is. And then you have to figure out, do you want to go to the left or do you want to go to the right of 0? Well, here we have y is less than. So we want to use the smaller numbers. So if this is 0 here, we want to go in that direction. The other thing we have to think about is what type of notation do we want to use at the point where it is the 0? Are we looking for the open and closed dots? Open dot does not equal. Or the closed dot which tells it it does equal. So I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing there is no bar under there to tell me that it does equal. So I want to use the open dot. The other notation that we could use for this is the parentheses. So again, we have 0 here, and we can use parentheses to say does not equal, or we can use the square brackets to say it does equal. And I can write a little bit better than that. So if I'm using the parentheses and brackets, first thing I have to do is figure out what direction am I going, which will tell me whether I'm using the opening or the closing set of these. So now I see that I need to use the closing set, and I see that it does not equal, so I'm going to use the closing parentheses. And those are the 2 sets of things that you have to watch out for. Now, as far as whether you're going to use the dots or the parentheses and brackets, that's up to you. You get to make that choice. I am not going to force that onto you. Another teacher might try to say you have to use one or you have to use the other set. That's between you and that teacher. But they are both correct. So looking at the second example, we have x is greater than 3. This is the greater than symbol. So here, I want to find 3. So I would have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Should be spaced equally. I am not the best of artists. So there's 3. I have to decide which way is it going to go. Is it going to go to the left or is it going to go to the right? I want x to be greater than that. So I think about that and I think about numbers. 4 is bigger than 3. So I want it to go in that direction, towards 4. So I draw my line out that way. It doesn't stop anywhere because there's nothing saying where it would stop. Okay. And then I have to decide if I'm using the dots, which dot do I use? Look at the bottom there. There's no equal to part, so I do an open dot. There's no equal to part. Which one do I choose? Does not equal. I'm going to use the parentheses. So do I want to use the opening parentheses or do I want to use the closing parentheses? Since it's going out in that direction, it would make more sense to have the open parentheses. So those are the first two examples. Let's go with this last one here before I erase. -5 is greater than or equal to x. Notice that it has that extra bar there. So I want to find -5 on my graph. So I count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's my -5. And this one keeps going and going and going. It does not stop at -5. Okay. Found my -5. My x, is it going to be greater than or less than? Notice in these two examples, the letter came first, and then the number after that. Here, we have the number first, and then the letter. So, we have to think about this a little bit more. -5 is greater than x. -5 is greater than -6. -6 is a smaller number. I would rather have $5 that I owe to somebody than having $6 that I owe to somebody. So I want my arrow, my line, to go out into the negatives further. I don't want it to go to 0. And generally with most of these you can compare it to 0. So I can ask myself, is -5 greater than or equal to 0? No, it's not. So I want to go away from 0. Now I have to figure out open or closed dot. So if you're the type that's using the open closed dot, I know that it does equal. I have that little extra line there, so it does equal. So I'm going to use the closed dot. And I don't want my green to turn blue, so I'm erasing that. And I close my dot. Looking down here at this one where we're using the parentheses versus the brackets, I want it to say it does equal. It could possibly be -5, so I want to use the square brackets. Which one do I use? Well, since I'm going off to this direction, it would make sense to put the closing one here. So I am going to put my closing bracket there. So those three are finished. Now I have to do these two down at the bottom. But of course I need room. So looking at these down here, what is different about these is that here we have a number on each side of my x. Typically when you have numbers on both sides, you're always going to have the less than symbol. So I am going to take my x and I want it to be between -2 and +3. So I find my 0 on my graph. I find my -2 on my graph, and I find my +3 on my graph. Those are the two numbers here. Now I have to figure out what type of notation do I want to use. Do I want to use the dots, or do I want to use parentheses and brackets? So I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to do it with both dots and with parentheses brackets so that no matter which one you want to use, you can use it. And my blue marker is running out of ink. So I have my -2, I have my +3. Using the dots, I want to find out, does it not equal or does it equal? Is it possible that it could actually be -2? Is it possible that it could actually be +3? So I look for that extra little bar down there. I see the bar, so I'm going to put a closed dot at -2. I see the bar down here, so I'm going to put a closed dot at +3. And I want x to be anything in the middle of them, so I draw my line from one closed dot to the other closed dot. Quite similar, very much the same with my parentheses versus brackets. I have that little bar down there saying it could equal, so I have my brackets instead of parentheses. So I'm going to put my opening bracket at the -2, my closing bracket at the +3, and I'm going to put my line to connect them. And that one's done. Okay. Looking at my other set over here, I have -4 to 0. So I need to find -4. And I need to find 0. Looking at my numbers, let's make that -4 look a little bit more like a 4. Looking at my numbers compared to my letter, I do not have an equal to bar there. So it's not going to equal at -4. So it's getting an open dot. I do have an equal to sign there. So that's going to equal up here. And I forgot this bottom one is supposed to get the parentheses stuff. Okay. So x is everything in between them. So I draw it from one dot to the other dot. Down here, it's supposed to be parentheses and brackets. Okay, it does not equal. So this is going to be the parentheses, because it does not equal. Over here, we have that it does equal, so it's going to get the brackets. And my line goes in between them. So that's done for the graphing. Now, the other thing we have to do is write these in interval notation. So I'm going to start with these two down here, and I need to make a little space so I can actually write this. I'm going to do these up at the top too. Okay, so for this one, going in interval notation, it helps when doing interval notation if you use the brackets and the parentheses rather than the dots. Because that is just telling you right there, I want to use my open bracket, my -2, comma, and that has a closing bracket. There's my 3, closing bracket. Okay, so these get square at both ends. Going over to that one, I have my opening. It does not equal, did not equal here. So I have my open is going to be parentheses. It gives me the -4. It goes up to 0. Can it equal at 0? Yes. Yes. So that gets the squared off one. So this is saying my numbers can be anything from -2 to +3, including -2 and +3. Over here, it's saying my numbers can be anything from -4 up to 0, but it does not include -4, and it does include 0. So -4, but not actually -4, up to 0, including 0. So seeing it with the two numbers on each of them, that helps you to figure it out a little bit more what this is talking about before we go up to this stuff. So looking at these now, I had strictly less than, and the y was the smaller stuff. So on my graph, I had my 0, and I had my numbers going away from there, and I had the closing parentheses. So my closing parentheses are going to be by the 0. But what do I put over here? It just kept going and going and going. So if we do that, it keeps going all the way to infinity, but since it's going in that direction, it's going to negative numbers, it's going to negative infinity. Infinity, no matter whether it's negative or positive, always gets the round parentheses. So looking at this one, we had the x is greater than 3. So on my graph, I had my 3, and I had my numbers going out in that direction. And I said that it did not equal 3, so it got the round parentheses. So looking at my interval notation, I give the round parentheses. The 3 is the smallest number that it could possibly be. And then my largest number that it can be, there's no endpoint there, so it goes up to infinity. And infinity always, always gets the round parentheses. Looking at this last one over here, we have the -5 is greater than, so on my graph, I have my -5. -5 was the largest number it could be, so it went off in that direction. And it could actually equal that, so it got the square there. So I get my square, I get my -5 at this side. I have to figure out what's going over on that side. Well, it kept going and going and going. So it went to negative infinity. And again, infinity, no matter whether it's positive or negative, we can never actually reach it, so it's getting the round parentheses. And that is it for this one.